Communism, Agamben. In pornography, the utopia of a classless society displays itself through gross caricatures of those traits that distinguish classes and their transfiguration in the sexual act. Nowhere else, not even in a carnival's masquerade, does one find such a stubborn insistence on class markers in dress at the very moment that situation both transgresses and nullifies them in the most incongruous of ways. The starched caps and aprons of maids, the workers' overalls, the butler's white gloves and striped waistcoat, and more recently, even the smocks and half-masks of nurses, all celebrate their apotheosis at the moment in which, set like strange amulets on inextricably tangled naked bodies, they seem to trumpet forth that last on which they are to appear as the emblems of a community we can still barely glimpse. The only thing similar in the ancient world are the representations of the amorous relations between men and gods, an inexhaustible source of inspiration for classical art in its decline. In sexual union with a god, the overwhelmed and happy mortal suddenly cancels the infinite distance separating him from the heavenly ones. But at the same time, this distance is reestablished, though in reverse, in the animal metamorphosis of the god. The guileless muzzle of the bull that bears Europa away, the sharp beak of the swan poised over Leda's face, these are the signs of a promiscuity so intimate and heroic as to be, for a little while yet, intolerable. If we look for the truth content of pornography, it immediately displays its artless and insipid claim to happiness. The essential character of this happiness is that it must be enacted at any time or place, whatever the initial situation. It must inevitably end up in a sexual relation. A pornographic film in which, by some mischance, this didn't happen would perhaps be a masterpiece, but it would no longer be a pornographic film. The striptease is, in a sense, the model of every porn plot. Always and without exception, they start with people in any old situation wearing clothes, and the only space left to the unforeseen is the way in which they must come together, stripped at the end. Porn has in this the austerity of classical literature. There must be no space for surprise, and talent consists in imperceivable variations on one mythic theme. And here the second essential characteristic of porn unveils itself. The happiness shown is always anecdotal, always a story, a moment seized on, never a natural condition or something taken for granted. The naturalism that merely does away with clothes has always been the most relentless adversary of porn, just as a porn film without a sensual act would make no sense. The simple, motionless display of man's natural sexuality can hardly be defined as pornographic. To demonstrate that the potential for happiness is present in every least moment of daily life wherever there is human society, this is the eternal political justification of porn. But its truth content, which sets it at the opposite pole from the naked bodies which crowd fin de siècle monumental art, is that the pornography does not elevate the everyday world to the everlasting heaven of pleasure, but rather shows the unremediably episodic nature of every pleasure, the inner aimlessness of every universal. This is why it is only in representing the pleasure of the woman, inscribed solely in her face, that porn achieves its intention. What would the characters in the porn film, if we are watching, say, if they in turn could be the spectators of our lives? Our dreams cannot see us. This is the tragedy of utopia. The exchange between character and a reader, a good rule for all reading, ought to also function here, except that what is important is not so much that we learn to live our dreams, but that they learn to read our lives. It will seem then that the world has possessed for a long, long time the dream of a thing of which it must only possess the awareness in order to truly possess. Well and good, but how are dreams possessed? Where are they kept? Naturally, it is not a matter here of fulfilling something. Nothing is more boring than a man who has fulfilled his own dreams. This is the insipid, social democratic zealousness of porn. But neither is it a matter of carefully keeping in chambers of alabaster, untouchable and garlanded with jasmine and roses, ideals that would crumble on coming things. This is the secret cynicism of the dreamer. Baslin said, "What we have dreamed, we have had already, a long time ago. So long ago that we don't even remember. Not in the past, therefore we do not have any records of it. Rather, the unfulfilled dreams and desires of humanity are the patient limbs of the resurrection, always ready to reawaken on the last day. And they don't sleep, enclosed in rich mausoleums, but are fixed like living stars in the farthest heaven of language, whose constellations we can barely make out. And this, at least, we didn't dream. To know how to grasp the stars that fall from the never dreamt of firmament of humanity is the task of communism.